All those things and so much more. Just grab a seat in the chair or the floor. Sit back, relax, recline. While she drops another casual line. You're tuned into Casually Molly with Molly and Bergie.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the Casually Molly podcast. I am your host, Molly Ambergy. I am back in studio today from the last 2 episodes being remote, and I'm very, very excited to introduce our next guest. If you're watching, you can see her. The New York Times calls her math professor by day, conjurer by night. Give it up for magician Tori Noquez. Woo!
Hi, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, of course. What's going on? Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and where you're at right now?
Yeah, so I am a math professor. I'm at Indiana University here in Bloomington, Indiana, which is a very pretty college town in the forest, if you're not familiar, which I was not before I moved here because I'm from the West Coast. But it's pretty great. But I have this very different side of my double life where I'm also a magician.
Yes,
and
I love it.
Yeah, and I don't really do that here. So a week ago, I was in Hollywood at the Magic Castle performing for 7 nights in a row, which is an insane engagement. So I came back very, very tired and had to get back to my normal life as a professor. So it's kind of it's very disjoint.
Yeah, but I didn't even realize it was a 7-night production. How many shows did you do per night?
So the booking is for 4 shows a night, but it varies on like how busy it is. So I did a total of 20.
Oh my God. What?
Yeah, I'm very tired still. Yeah. I've been back for a week, I guess. Did I get back a week ago? Oh my God, I don't even know. Yeah, I came back on Labor Day. Yeah, I've been back for 1 week. I'm still recovering.
Yeah, I mean, 20 shows. I mean, how long are the magic shows per show? Like how many minutes?
Each show is between 15 and 20 minutes.
Okay.
So you have, they start every 45 minutes. So you do your show, you reset, and keep going. So most nights, I only had 2 nights where I did all 4. So, because it's not that busy yet because, people are still wary of out. So, but it was, it's really great though. There's something to be said for doing the same show 20 times in a row. You really perfect it. Like you learn all the beats and all the moments and like exactly how audiences are going to behave. So that's a gift really in a lot of ways, but it's grueling. So.
But what's great is that, you have the talent, you obviously love it. I mean, that is a really amazing venue to be a part of. How long have you been? I'm like stuttering because I'm so excited to talk to you about this. Exactly. Well, first of all, you look adorable. You have like this beautiful sparkly shirt on. So you already have magic happening.
You know what?
Yeah.
I have a confession to make though. About 5 minutes before I signed on, I realized that there was a video component, which I didn't figure out. So I changed out of my pajamas and put this on. So you're welcome.
You look great. I mean, basically I'm in a jumpsuit right now, which is basically pajamas. And then I threw on a blazer to make sure I looked professional for this. So,
very professional.
professional.
I'm feeling the interviewer vibe. That's good.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so the Magic Castle is it's this private club in Hollywood, right? So it was established in the 60s, and you can't just go. You have to like be invited by a member or somehow find a way in. So you can't just like show up in LA and buy a ticket. So that's kind of the whole thing. Yeah. And they have a really strict dress code, so you have to be in cocktail attire. So I have like a jillion nice dresses because I can like justify it, which is one of my favorite things about it. So I started. So unlike a lot of magicians, I didn't do magic as a kid at all. I was kind of a science kid, as evidenced by my career as a mathematician. So But when I was 22, I was living in LA and. I guess my mom sort of, she had a way in. It was like my mom was at a conference in LA somewhere, and then somebody in the conference was a member or had access to like bring a group of people in. Like there was some roundabout way I was able to get in.
Yes.
And so I went. My mom called me and she was like, "Do you want to go to this thing? I don't really know what it is." I was like, "Yes," because I'd heard about it. And you know.
Sure.
And it was just so cool and interesting. And I got to dress up, and it's this like really neat old mansion overlooking, like, it's just north of Hollywood Boulevard. And it's really glamorous and really kind of mysterious and interesting. And I just like wanted to be part of it. So I immediately signed up for the classes and started learning magic. And here we are. So that was in 2010 that this began. Yeah. I didn't start performing professionally until about 2019. Kind of did a PhD in the middle of that, so I was a little bit busy.
So that's what I said to Tori. I was like, so you have done everything. Like, I was joking earlier. I was like, oh, this professor over here. But for real, though, like, I am just so impressed by your whole resume. I was like, she's a professor. Now you're telling me you have a PhD. And then on top of it, you're a magician. And what we were talking about before we started recording was that, you know, I love seeing women doing great things, obviously. And you know, being a comedian, I'm kind of in a male-dominated profession.
Of course,
Yes. So that's what I was saying. I don't really see, and not to say, like, I don't see a lot of women magicians, but I've always seen, when I watched magic, not to, you know, make this question so long, but I always saw, like, the woman next to the guy, and she was always kind of like a show, like, kind of like a show horse or a show pony to the magician. So seeing you and, like, this beautiful gown, you're, like, you have, like, this, I mean, we were supposed to do that show together, obviously. Unfortunately, it was the beginning of March when COVID first happened, but not to bring that down. But what I've loved seeing you do is, you know, now I see why you have all these pretty gowns. I'm like, maybe that's just her style and she loves it.
No.
But
no, that's for work.
Yeah, I love it though. I love seeing you do it.
Yeah, thank you. It's, you know, if you looked at, like, you know, the billing the week I was at the castle, so they're these week-long engagements and they have several different showrooms, so there's usually about 8 performers who are booked in a given week. And if you look at the week of mine, it's very much one of these things is not like the others.
Yes.
I was the only woman booked my week. And you know, and that doesn't speak of the venue or anything specific. It's just the field, you know. There's so few women who are encouraged in it, I guess. I mean, I'm kind of the wrong person to ask, right? Because I'm exactly a woman who did pursue magic. So like, but I've definitely watched a major improvement just in the 10, 11 years I've been doing it. Just with like people at least trying to be nicer about it. But you pointed out something really important, which is that not only are women underrepresented, but historically they've played a very specific role as not the magician. So that's like a whole different uphill battle, because I mean, as a mathematician, that's also male dominated, right? But like, it's a different thing in a lot of ways, because there wasn't truly a role that women were in and expected to be in. They just weren't there. So it's kind of it's a different thing. So yeah, but there's a lot of improvement, and it's continuing to get better. It's just slow, like anything. So slow improvement.
But what I appreciate about you is you're part of that improvement, and you are like pursuing magic. I can obviously tell you love it. Not just because you're just smiling in every picture, but I was about to say, do you have any, you know, I don't know too much about the magic world, but are there any people or magician wise that you look up to that you're like, oh, that they were somebody that I idolized growing up, I wanted to be them?
Yeah. So, well, I guess, I mean, this is about to be a bit of a sad story, so I'm just warning.
It's okay.
But okay, good. So that,
I'm here for you, girl. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. No, so that first night I went to the Magic Castle when I was 22, I didn't know a ton about magic. Like like I said, I didn't do it as a kid. I hadn't really been exposed to it, because it's kind of a weird specific art form, right? Like a lot, you know, you ask the average person, like, oh, have you ever been to a magic show? Like maybe, or like you've seen it at a birthday party or what, you know, like it's not, people aren't really exposed to it that much, like just on average. So when I went that first time, I thought this was all really cool and interesting. And then the very last show of the night was in this room. So the rooms are organized by size of audience. So there's the Palace of Mystery, which is like the big stage where you see like big people getting sawed in half and stuff like this. And then there's the Parlor of Prestidigitation, which is medium size. Yeah, that's a word. It's
I was like,
presto,
wow.
Like, yeah, I was like 60% sure I was going to get through the whole word without stumbling.
Killing it. Better than me.
Thank you. It's one I've had to say a lot, but it's like presto means fast, and then digitation is hands, so it's like fast hands.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
Learning.
Yes, I'm
anyway,
definitely learning.
That room, good. That's my whole thing. That room seats about 60, and it's usually performed standing, so it's a little smaller. And then the room that I perform in, and the type of magic I specialize in, is called the close-up gallery, which is exactly what it sounds like. And it only seats 25, 26. And it's, this is things like card tricks and coins and like small everyday objects that you see that you're like right there. So that night that I went, the very last show of the night, it was probably after midnight, was in this close-up room. And oftentimes they'll do a thing where they'll pick a spectator to sit at the table with a magician, and that person kind of picks cards or does whatever, like on behalf of the audience. So I got picked to sit at the table, and it was just like absolutely the coolest thing I'd ever like seen or been part of. And it was this magician named Luis, who he did a lot of like really amazing coin magic, and he was just so cool and nice. And so when I went home that night, I signed up for the classes at the Magic Castle because I wanted to learn magic right away. And I emailed him and told him just like what an important experience this was for me and how I'd never seen anything like this. And I just wanted to be part of it. And so maybe, let's see, this was in February. So the following July, I had taken, 10 weeks worth of the courses. And I auditioned to become a magician member. So I mentioned you have to be like a member to go. Mm-hmm. So there's two types of membership. You can be an associate member, which just means you pay the dues like any private club. Or you can be a magician member, which means you have to audition and like pass a series of criteria that you're like a serious magician.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, and honestly, like my magician member audition at the Magic Castle was like scarier than my PhD defense. It was so stressful. Like
wow.
It's really intense. So, but once you become a magician member, there are lectures and there's an amazing library and like, there's a lot of like perks. So
okay.
In any case, I did that. And then the next time I saw him was at a lecture at the castle. He's like, "Oh my God, it's you. You were totally serious." I was like, "Yep, here I am."
Yeah, I am.
And since then, he was always like a kind of a mentor figure. So he wasn't like a magic teacher in the most traditional sense, but like he always kind of showed me the ropes and would like watch me perform and give me tips and stuff like this. And then the very first time I got booked in a showroom to headline at the Magic Castle, so they're in like time slots, right? So I was like performing early and he was performing late. So we actually shared that week, which was just so cool. It was such a like great full circle that he'd kind of been looking out for me the whole time. So I guess as far as magicians I've looked up to, he's like the first person who really introduced me to the magic world and then was supportive all throughout, which was really awesome. And I guess the sad part of this story is that we lost him to COVID in January. So that's been pretty hard on me this year.
Tori,
yeah.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. But
So-
in a beautiful way, what keeps him alive is the fact that you have that story to tell about him.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always think of him, especially when I'm booked at the Magic Castle, because that's sort of how I started right there with him. So yeah, I definitely want to, honor him in all of my magical pursuits. He was always there for me and like to continue the art form because it, obviously it was very important to him. So I'm happy to carry on his legacy as I can. But it's there. I feel like one of the reasons that I pursued magic as seriously as I did in the time in my life when I did was that I had like the right combination of people encouraging me, and he was definitely one of them. So that's something I try to bring forward too, especially as a woman in magic, especially as a woman of color in magic. Like I try to, like when there's people who are new and interested, I always want to encourage everybody because like by the nature of the art form, there's a huge barrier to entry because it's secret, right?
Yeah.
Like that's built into it. It's not just the normal like ego and posturing of any performance art. It's also this like, oh, well, should we let you in? It's secret. So I try to like pass that on when I have the opportunity because it's tough out there, as you know, as a performance artist, just that alone.
Yeah. And it's like, it's hard. Like for me, that's why I was like, I had these questions down and I was kind of like, how does one even become a magician? I was like, I really don't know because I'm not too familiar with it. I've seen my background on magic is just really seeing things on TV and then seeing you, of course, do stuff too.
Right.
So, but that's what I love is that I'm like, oh, cool. I know somebody that's a part of it. I already feel like I've learned so much. And speaking of the legacy portion, I had mentioned earlier in the beginning, the New York Times recognized you. You had an article that you were featured in. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, well, we had a show booked in St. Louis on March 13th, 2020.
Yeah.
Which, if everybody will look back in their diaries, that was when we all closed up. So
like,
that got canceled.
Yeah.
Yeah, done. I'm still waiting for it to get rebooked. So
yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
I'll be there.
Amanda, where you at, girl?
Yeah. Hey, we're here. We're ready.
We're ready to go, Amanda.
So, I had been preparing for the show because I perform magic kind of sporadically. Like I just did this week in Hollywood, but my next booking is not until November because I have a day job, which is a very intense career. So yeah, so I had this show like locked and loaded. I was ready to perform. Like we didn't cancel till the day before. So I was like, okay, well, I have all my props and stuff ready to go. I want to do a show. And so I got on Facebook Live, which is a terrible platform, turns out, but nobody knew how to use Zoom yet. So it's not that, I just say it's terrible because it's really laggy. So you can't have more than one video feed on. And the comments are like 30 seconds to a minute later than when they're made. So it's just not good for interacting live. So I hopped on Facebook Live and had about 100 people join in and watch me do my little tricks. And then I made this very ambitious declaration that I would continue every week as long as we're shut down.
Right.
Who knew? No one did. So I kept that up for about 10 weeks, which was a lot. And I challenged myself to do different material every week, which made it really hard. Yeah. But it also made me work on a bunch of new and old material, which was really good for me because, it's easy to just like do the same stuff over and over and over. So it actually kind of like sparked my like working on a lot of new material that wound up in like my castle show this go around. So it was a good thing. But sometime maybe 2 months into that, the New York Times reached out to me and said that they were some lady said she's like writing an article about Zoom magic and wondered if she could come to one of my or online magic. I guess we hadn't even really gotten to Zoom yet, but like live stream magic, I guess. And I don't know, she came to my show and then I got a nice little mention in the article. And it wasn't like a full article about me. It was about like various performers who were doing like live stream in the early days.
But you were one of them, girl. Yeah, I'm excited.
That's right. Yeah, it's a real nice quote for like my Instagram bio. yeah, I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah. I mean, what an honor. I mean, I grew up reading the New York Times. Like before it was even on the internet, I would read like the paper version.
Awesome.
My mom would want to take me to like the coffee shop, or at the time McDonald's even would have it in like the little before. Now you can order it to your door. Yeah, exactly. In the little box that people are watching. We're like, these are my magic hands, Tori. We're like, I'm like, here's that. And now I'm like reading it online, and I was just so impressed that you had somebody, obviously your reach has done so well. What I'll ask you too is you obviously talked about Los Angeles. Your upcoming show is going to be in Chicago.
That's right. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about that? I also noticed it's my birthday weekend, so maybe I'll just drive up to Chicago.
Make a trip to Chicago. I'll get you tickets. It'll be amazing. Okay. Yeah. So
31.
I did my. Ooh, nice. Good one. Prime number. I like it.
Prime number. Sure. I'm taking it. You're a mathematician, so I'm going to take it as a prime number. So
it is.
But go ahead. Sorry, not to make this about me.
So there's a venue in Chicago called the Chicago Magic Lounge, which it started, or the group started in 2015. I went to grad school in Chicago, so I lived in Chicago for 6 years, and was kind of around for the start of this thing. And then, of course, I moved away. I moved to LA. And then, yeah, they got their own space in 2017, and it's really cool. It's like this old laundromat facility, or like industrial laundry or something. So you like enter through this, yeah, it's like a bunch of washing machines, and they're real and they work. And then it's like a secret entrance, and you go in, and it's a magic venue. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yeah,
that
awesome.
is so cool. I love that kind of stuff. Yes.
Yeah. So, and this is actually the case in the Magic Castle as well. There's like a bookcase with a little owl on it named Artemis, and you go to the owl and you say "Open Sesame," and the bookcase opens. So this is just like a thing. Excuse me.
Oh, you're fine.
This is a thing in magic.
Oh, hi.
Also, here's my lovely assistant who's having a meltdown. So.
Oh, hi, kitty cat. What's is it a boy, girl?
It's a she. Her name's Lily.
Hi, Lily.
She's very cranky. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I love when it. So sometimes I told you dogs and cats make a casual appearance on this podcast. So if you're watching
she's casual.
Yes, Lily making a casual appearance. I love it. We all love cats, so it's fine. Yep. Look at that face.
I know she's a little bit cranky. I think she wants her dinner, but I'm busy.
Blame her.
Can you? All right. Well, later. Okay. No, you want to come to the desk? Okay. All right.
So yes, we were saying.
Yes. Right. So the Chicago Magic Lounge, which, it's just a really cool venue. So they also have several different rooms. Like they have bar magic, and they have a big stage, and then they have a close-up room, which is where I'll be performing, because that's the kind of magic I do. Called the 654 Club, and it's an incredible venue because it's very new, and it's designed with magicians in mind. So all the tech is really great, and it's a wonderful place to perform. And of course, I love Chicago because I lived there for a long time. So it's you kind of can't go wrong. That's coming up. I will be there November 4th through 7th. So, and you have to there's like different levels of tickets, I guess. So just make sure if you're coming, which anyone who can should, because it's really fun and cool, that you get tickets such that you have access to the 654 Club, because that's the close-up room. That's where I'll be performing. So.
Very, very cool. Just curious, because you said there's different types of magic. What made you decide to do close-up magic? Why did you choose that? Or do you just do all of it? Explain to me, because obviously I'm ignorant.
I do not do all of it. No. That's actually a really, really good question, because it's kind of one of those things where, like, I guess as a layperson, it's like, oh, magic is magic, right?
Right,
but, one of the reasons I do close-up magic is the props. So, like, I can go to CVS and buy a deck of bicycle cards, rather than like have a giant, box, whatever, stage magic illusion, which are, extremely expensive and really hard to transport. So I had, when I was packing up on my last night at the Magic Castle last week, I was like going back and forth, like loading up the car. And I mentioned this to some of my fellow close-up magicians, or just fellow magicians at least, and I was like, yeah, you guys, I gotta go, I gotta pack up the car. And they were like, what do you mean you have to pack up the car? Aren't you a close-up magician? I was like, well, yeah, but I'm a girl, so I have like a bunch of pairs of shoes and like all this different stuff. So it's kind of but partly it's the props. Really, it's just the part of magic that I was attracted to when I first started. So like that was what I was most excited about. I love playing cards, so that's just kind of how that came to be, I guess. But part of it is access. So as what is sort of termed a hobbyist, which I was for many years before I started doing this professionally, it's expensive. So, and especially the larger the illusion, the more expensive. So, that alone is a barrier to entry. So thing I like about close-up magic, and sort of one of the ways I approach it in particular, sort of aesthetically, is I like the idea that this is just like stuff you find around your house. This is like the deck of cards everyone has in their junk drawer in their kitchen, or the coins or whatever. So I guess that's how I kind of wound up in that branch.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I was just like sitting up here and I tried to put my hands down as I'm listening. I'm like, absolutely. But no, I think that's really cool that you you have something that you enjoy like that. And I love that you mentioned hobbyist, because sometimes I feel like something that you just do like as a hobby or something you're interested can grow to a professional level. Absolutely. Yeah.
I had no idea. I had no
Mhm.
idea. Like when I started, I just wanted to learn card tricks because I thought it was really cool and interesting. I didn't think
Yes.
I'd be performing on like huge stages across the country. Like this was not
Yes.
this was not in the plan. But
Yes.
you know, it just I like I mean, I think this is sort of my personality type that when I have like an interest that I'm pursuing, I go like all the way.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I feel the same exact way. Once I'm like hooked
yeah,
into something, it's the same with like
yeah,
comedy and playwriting.
totally. I
You're
can
like,
totally see that. Yeah.
hello, yep.
Right. Yeah, because I can imagine, like, I mean, I don't know, you can correct me if this is wrong. When I was a teenager, I spent a lot of time at this open mic that had both comedy and music. And,
Oh,
like,
okay.
it seemed like there's a lot of people doing comedy that just kind of do it at open mics, and it's just like a thing. It's a hobby,
Mhm.
and it's whatever. But then
Oh,
there's,
yeah.
like, I imagine the, like, crossover to booking that are, like, paid gigs and stuff. Like, is
Yes.
that, like, a thing? I mean,
Totally.
we have that in magic, too. That's,
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what it's just the same thing where like a lot of times I'll meet people, they're trying out comedy, they've seen it on Netflix or YouTube or
yeah.
something, or some people are like older and they're like, here's something on my bucket list. And then there gets to a
Oh,
certain
sure.
point. Like I've been doing comedy for 5 years now. And I think there's just
Oh,
a certain
nice.
point where you're like, cool, I'm doing paid gigs, I'm running a podcast,
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
hosting more now, you're trying to get to a certain point. And then that's another thing I'll ask you too is like the humility factor. You kind of, you learn that too. At first you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to do all of this stuff. I mean, and then sometimes you having these different learning experiences and whatnot, you're like, okay, maybe I've kind of learned that everything's a slow progression, right? And I feel like,
Absolutely.
yeah, how long have you been doing magic? And when were you kind of being like, okay, cool, now I'm getting to that point where I'm getting paid gigs, I'm starting to do all this work, when was that kind
Yeah.
of transition for you?
So, yeah, I started
I'm
in
listening.
2010. I feel it. I gotcha. So I started in 2010, and then my first. So I've been doing gigs like kind of volunteering basically. So one of the actual really big perks of the Magic Castle is that they have these impromptu spaces. So as a magician member who has auditioned and become, they've sort of vetted you, you can use those spaces and they run kind of like an open mic. So you can just sort of show up and like perform. And so that's like a really amazing perk because it lets you get like flight time or performance time for audiences that are there to see magic, which is really unique. So, I've definitely done open mics that are geared towards comedy or music with magic, which it's kind of a mixed bag. It actually usually plays pretty well, but it's also like people are like, "What's this?
What are we doing?"
Like,
yeah,
like what am I looking at? Yeah, so it's kind of so. But the majority of my performance experience was stuff like that, or like just various sort of smallish gigs that I'd like volunteer for or whatever. So my very first paid gig ever was the Magic Castle, which is kind of a weird weird entry, but it's like how I came up through magic. So and that had been kind of a dream that I had not taken super seriously. So, I kind of thought like this would be so cool and great to like, be booked at the Magic Castle. And I, had made a video and sent it to the entertainment director a few years before that. And it was kind of like, I wasn't ready. It wasn't. But then after I graduated, after I finished my PhD, I moved to LA area. And so I was able to go to the Magic Castle a lot and really hone my act in those impromptu spaces. And then I made another recording and finally like got the nerve to send it in and I got booked right away. So it was just like the right time, like it was ready. And then once I got that booking, that opens a bunch of doors because it's sort of magic pedigree, right? Like it's, that sort of establishes you. That and just the networking in LA. So, I was living in the area at the time and, people would see me perform and then give them a business card and then they'd hire me to do like their cocktail parties or their weddings or whatever, like these different kinds of gigs.
Wow.
So yeah, that's kind of how I eased into that. So I have the luxury as a person with a day job of not marketing myself at all because it's, I don't need gigs. I just take the ones that I want, which are usually at magic venues like the Magic Castle and the Chicago Magic Lounge. But so of course I like network and communicate with the people who book those gigs, but I don't really hustle because I sort of don't need to or want to or realistically have time to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of how that got started, really. And then from there, it just kind of, once you have a credential like that, you can sort of build upon it and get different stuff. So yeah, it's kind of.
Well, that's what I say, yes, like you are busy, you have a lot of hands and everything. But like I said, I'm always very accomplished by everything that I read about you. What was your, I don't know too much about your PhD. What did you get your PhD in?
Yeah, so I'm a mathematician.
Yes.
And so I study, so I did my PhD in a branch of formal logic called model theory, which is not what it sounds like. It's
okay.
People hear the word model and think like, oh yeah, like a statistical model. It's not that at all. It's the way I like to describe it is it's kind of an abstraction of abstract algebra. So really, it's just really, really pure math. So what it is it's kind of, all right, let me give you the elevator spiel. And if I lose anybody listening, like, don't be personally offended. Because
no, you're not going to lose anybody because this is so impressive. You're doing everything. You're doing magic. You're doing math. You have a cat. You're killing it. You're doing great.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, so we basically, all right, here we go. Here comes the spiel. So abstract algebra is like, you look at a part of math, like the integers or polynomial functions or just some collection of mathematical objects that interact with each other. And you look at the rules that those follow. Like, so say you look at the integers. Well, if you add 0 to anything, you just get back the same number. Or if you do a plus b, that's the same as b plus a. Or you distill down these rules that the structure follows. And so that's one level of abstraction, is you just look at that collection of rules and say, okay, well, what other parts of math behave the same way? And what do I know has to necessarily follow just from this information? So you kind of abstract that out. So that's one level of abstraction. And then the next level of abstraction comes out of formal logic, where you take those rules and you only write them down using certain symbols. So in this way, it's loosely related to computer science, or like theoretical computer science. If you think of like a computer can only write certain symbols and functions and stuff. So you write those rules down just with like certain symbols in a certain really specific way. And then what you can do is study how those symbols interact, if they're following these very strict sort of regulations about how you're allowed to use them, and then get information about what that says about the rules you wrote down, which then gives you information about the mathematical structures.
Okay.
So that's kind of the spiel.
No,
so,
I find this fascinating, and I don't mean to interrupt you. Do you kind of feel you're like, I'm done? But do you feel
that's as far as that can go?
No, and I understand. It's like a whole PhD of information that you had to just do in 5 minutes.
I've been doing this for like 15 years. Yeah.
What I find interesting, you were talking about, retrieving the abstract, and that's kind of what you do in magic, is that you...
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. You kind of feel like your PhD and your magician career kind of work hand in hand together.
Totally. I even use this as pattern in my act a little bit, but it's completely honest that in some ways, so here's how I like to kind of explain it, is that when I'm doing like research in math, it's just like made up, right? Like it's just, we make up this math stuff and we sort of like dig around in this made up universe. And it's like, okay, if these are the rules, then what has to happen and what can we figure out and how do these things act? And like, I think after a certain level, it requires a lot of creativity, because you have to think like, okay, well, what's a way to think about these things, or what can we construct to sort of give us information? And I think about magic in very much the same way. It's sort of this very strange type of creativity where you want to say like, okay, I can like think of a thing, but it's not like confined to reality, right? So like, as an example, in math, you can like go up to arbitrary dimensions, right? So like, we live in a 3-dimensional world, or if you draw on a piece of paper, that's 2 dimensions, or if you just are moving on a line, that's 1 dimension. But you can like expand upon that analogously and think of like n-dimensional space or infinite dimensional space, and like do different stuff you want to do.
Okay.
Right. So I think there's something kind of analogous about how I think about magic sometimes when I'm trying to like create a new thing. And it's like, okay, I want to have an effect where something happens and then this card that was picked here appears here. How
Okay.
can that happen, right? So it's like you're not confined to like the normal regulations of reality. But
Hmm.
then the problem solving process is like, okay, now I need to go into like the mechanical skill of sleight of hand and figure out how to like do this.
Okay.
So yeah, it's somewhere in the
Yes.
same like
Oh
weird
my
brain
gosh.
space.
I feel like I've learned so much just listening to you right now. And I
Oh,
can
thank you.
see, well, the thing is, it also speaks volumes about you because you also like don't confine to, the reality of the situation. Like, I've never met somebody who, I mean, and I'm sure there's other people, it's just you're the first one that I've met, but I've never met somebody who's got like all of these talents and they're also a magician. Like, I always meet people, and I talk about this a lot on my podcast, but they're like, I either feel like I have to be this person or I have to be this person, and I can't be anything in between. And you are going in between those blurred lines, and I am just so
Thank
impressed
you.
by that.
It's
Yeah.
actually kind of hard. It's
Yeah.
weird too, right? Like it's, because I usually don't talk about one with the other and vice versa. Like I don't talk about magic at work a lot or like with
Yeah.
students even. And everybody kind of knows it's like a thing I do, but they don't really know it's like that I'm like serious about it.
Yeah.
And kind of similarly in the magic world. So like people know I'm a mathematician, but a lot of people don't even really know what mathematician means, right? They're like, oh, so do you teach what, high school? Like,
Right. What? Yeah.
is not, which is not, that is not a shot at teaching high school. That's an important career, but
Yeah.
they have no idea what the bulk of the work that I do in my actual job is.
Sure.
Because it's not relatable at all. Nobody knows what that is. So it's just kind of this like really disjoint existence. And of course, just geographically, like all of my magic community friends are in LA or Chicago. And I'm out here in the forest of Bloomington. Like
Yeah.
it's
But I bet it's
yeah,
a
so it's
beautiful place to kind of unplug a minute, and
oh
take it in. Yeah.
totally.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had like a really fun weekend going to the farmers market and library and just
Look at
being
you,
out
girl.
yeah,
What?
right.
Are you in
Like
Stars Hollow? What's
a
going on?
local, yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much, yeah. Rode my bike and just it's I'm very charmed by the novelty of small town living still, which I'm just gonna try to keep being charmed by that because it's all very foreign too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I love that you're doing all these amazing things.
Oh, thank you.
Obviously, like I said, when you agreed to come on, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe
Yeah.
this is so cute. I'm just so amazed by everything you do. I know I keep saying that, but I just love, I mean, and when am I going to be able to talk about magic with somebody? I'm so pumped.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like it too. So here,
Yeah,
I'm
you're
here.
like, what? Yeah, exactly.
I love
I'm
talking
here.
about magic. Yeah.
I love talking about magic. But speaking of talking about magic, what I do always kind of ask people is, did you ever have a show or an experience in magic that really made an impact on you? It could be funny, it can be positive, it could be, it could be negative. Just, is there a show that kind of pops out when you ask that question that was just a memorable experience for you?
That is a good question.
And there's probably a lot of them. So
yeah, I mean, like every show is a different experience. So I'm going to get all philosophical for like 2 seconds and I'll bring it back to normal talk. But
That's
like
okay.
one of the things I really love about performance art in particular of any art form is that, you can do the same show 20 times in a week, like I just did. And every single one is a little bit different. They're different people and they have different reactions. And like, it's a completely unique experience every single time between like performer and audience, which I think that's why I like to consume performance art as well, because that's like a really special, neat thing. So the sort of high level answer to your question is all of them, but not no. Let's see. Oh man, this is a tough one. Well, I guess. Okay, I'll start with a negative one that's kind of funny but also scary. It was
Okay.
I was performing in Hollywood and it was very late, like after midnight, and it was Saturday night and people had been drinking quite a lot, which that's fine.
Yeah.
And there was this one guy, and I was not new to magic. I'd probably been in it for maybe 4 or 5 years, so like newish. Like I had a show, and but. And this guy like was really drunk and he was kind of mumbling to himself, and he was like sitting maybe a couple of rows back, and it was just it was late night, whatever. I didn't really think about it too much. And this other dude just lit into him. It was like, dude, you need to shut up. She's doing her show. And I was like, whoa, all right. Completely out of line. Like, I don't know, no. And then at some point it came to blows. One of them hit the other one. I didn't catch which because it was kind of, but I was like, okay, you both need to get out of here like right now. This is not.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
What?
So that was probably my most memorable on the negative side show experience. It was so weird. It was like
late shows are always interesting. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm sure comedians see all kinds of stuff like this. It was just like I didn't even know how to handle it. I was just like, okay, please, just all of you need to shut up. Like I don't. It was really really weird. But my
okay.
Yeah, so that was the negative one, I guess. And then like afterwards, I was like waiting for my car at the
That's what I was gonna
ask.
like, yeah.
Yeah, and the guy who was yelling at the other guy like came up to me. He's like, "Hey, I was trying to help you." I was like, "No, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want anything to do with this." Like,
no, I'm out of this one.
Yeah, this had nothing to do with me. You can.
I'm gonna do some magic, and you're gonna disappear. Okay, great, thanks.
Oh man, it was real weird. I guess on a positive side, this is going to be a little sappy answer, but it was my most recent Magic Castle booking, just being back with a live audience for the first time in like 18 months. So that felt so good. It was just like, just pulling back the curtain, like they're there and I can hear them and I can see them. It just like, and it's a little bit sappy, but like it's super true. Just that like being in front of other human beings after so long, it was like, performing has always been like a really important, thing I like to do.
Yeah.
And of course, I get it in my day job too. I teach. So like that's a level of performance in some sense, or at least it's like a similar type of human interaction. Right. And so I had none of that for a very long time, like all of us. And then, just getting to actually dress up and not be like in a nice top and pajamas, bare feet, actually put on a pair of high heels for a change. It was, that just like was just like a sigh of relief after so long. So yeah, I guess that's my like positive one.
Oh, I love that though. Yeah, no, sometimes at a late show, I've done plenty of late shows and that's that sometimes happen. I haven't had anybody hit, but I do have like, sometimes we'll have hecklers and they try to say something. Oh yeah. And people really want to jump on those people. But the best advice that you can just give on that, just let like, you handle it or let security handle it. Just don't feel like you have to jump in. Yeah.
It's a tough one too. Like, I mean, we get hecklers too. I'm sure not as much as you do in comedy, but it does happen. And usually I try to just like keep the rest of the audience on my team.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. Yeah.
It's largely what I do when I'm teaching too. Like people are like talking or something. I'm like, hey guys, look, there's a show. Can you just like be cool for like 8 more minutes? Like, and
then we'll be done.
Sort of like, make sort of a joking, not joking joke out of it. It's like, okay, you need to shut up, but also I'm not going to be mean about it, but like also just shut up. Like,
oh yeah, absolutely. It's like, I'm not trying to be rude, but also it's very much, we had a whole episode about hecklers and like dealing with them.
Oh
and
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check it out.
Oh yeah.
Sounds
Such
awesome.
an art form. Oh yeah. JC Savala. He's a local comedian here
cool.
and he is fantastic at like handling people. I was like, you have to come on my podcast and talk about this. Yeah. Oh, totally.
Awesome.
Has anybody ever like, speaking of hecklers, has anybody like blown the trick for you or they're like, I know what's going on, or like, is this what's going to happen next at all?
Yeah, a little bit. Not
a little bit.
Not too bad. Sometimes like they'll sort of try to spoil a reveal. They'll be like, all the card's going to be over here, whatever. And I usually have a few lines for that, like, spoiler alert, geez, or, usually it's well-intending though. Like they're just really excited that they're like, I figured out it's going to be this, Rarely is it like negative, like, well, I know what you did.
Right.
And like on the occasion that does happen, usually it doesn't happen during the show. So occasionally I've had people like come up to me and be like, I figured out this thing. And I'm like, okay. I always just like nod. I'm like, oh yeah, good job.
All right,
like,
yeah.
And sometimes I take it a little further. I'm like, yeah, you figure it is a trick. Like, but as a general rule, I prefer not to antagonize audience members, even if they're being jerks.
Right.
But yeah, it's like, okay, you did
good for you.
Way to be. Like, it's, or sometimes I'll have ones who are like, it's kind of like, well, it's not, I was going to say it's kind of mansplaining, but it's not always men who do this. So it's just like condescendingly like, oh, you should know that I could see blah, blah, blah. And like 95% of the time when, these good Samaritans are trying to like help me with my act, they're just straight up wrong. Like they tell me they saw something that is like not how the trick works. I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. So, it's kind of like there's this thing in magic that does happen where sometimes some audience members view this as like a threat to their intelligence, which
okay.
you're going to a magic show wrong if that's the mindset you're in. But like, yeah, it's kind of this weird, like, I don't know, it does happen. It's not super common, but there are those audience members who like, they feel like if they can't figure it out, they've like failed at watching the show. Like,
and I'm like, hi, you're the magician. Just like, wow me.
That's the right thing. That's what we're here for. Like, that's what I'm here to do. So if you're doing anything else, you're doing it wrong. Like, yeah, so that's kind of an interesting, like, psychological quirk of just like some audience members. But it's not super duper common, but it does happen. And it's I'm always just gracious about it. I'm like, okay, yeah, you got good job.
Yeah,
like,
good for you.
Yeah, but it's a weird thing. It's because I don't think that's, there's sort of maybe a stereotype, or people kind of say this about like people like mathematicians who are like, oh, I have to figure everything out.
Right.
But like, we have to figure all the math out. That's not like a universal life property that like of all things. But even then, like when I wanted to get into magic, my main thing wasn't figuring it out. I just thought it was so cool and fun and interesting, and I wanted to like keep sharing in it, either as the side of the magician or the side of the audience. Like I still go to magic shows. I love watching magic. Like it's, so it's not about figuring it out. I mean, people who play music don't have to like know how to play every piece they listen to enjoy it.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. I feel that because, I mean, even with comedy, the best way to sometimes learn is to watch somebody. So sometimes I feel that where I go and I'll like watch another comedian, I'm like, oh, I really like their comedic timing and how they do something.
Yeah.
Or even if and that's the thing too, what I've learned is that I don't have to be, you can always like, you want to be like your favorite comedian, right? Like you're like, oh, it's just like, I want to be like my favorite magician. But then eventually what you learn is like, cool, this person inspired me and helped me become the person that I am today. Just like you were talking about your mentor, Louise, earlier.
Totally.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, I mean, I hope ideally that's the sort of the nature of having a community of performance artists that like, and these are sort of these subtleties that are not, taught as specific, like, parts of the thing, it's you're not, I mean, maybe magic more so than comedy, but I'm sure with both, like you learn certain sort of rules of the trade, like how to do it, I mean, for magic in particular, you learn how to like actually do tricks, right? But then there's like a lot of intangible stuff you learn along the way, and that's largely from just consuming other people's art, like and figuring out what you like and what works for you. I think that's a big thing, actually, to go back to your question about close-up magic. One of the reasons it's what I do is that I talk. I just talk all the time. I'm just constantly talking. And
great for this podcast interview. Great.
Right?
Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
It's all here. And so with close-up magic, you're in proximity to the audience, so I can talk to them. If you're on stage, it's not the same thing. You're through a mic, you can't really hear them or whatever. So that's one of the things that attracts me to it, is that it kind of suits my personality, kind of from like a teaching type perspective, and just that I like to talk to people. So it's, but that's like what suits me, right? So that's like very different for different performers. So yeah, I think that's something we all have to like kind of figure out.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that actually leads me into my last question before we head out here. Yeah. What is some casual advice that you would give to anybody who's maybe starting out in magic and that would like to pursue it maybe at the level that you're at? Which is a very great level, by the way. I asked that again,
thank you.
being ignorant and not knowing magic. I'm like, are there levels? Are there suites? I heard there's memberships. What's going on?
Yeah, there's memberships, there's bookings, there's, I don't know, it's all kind of, But yeah, I guess the advice that I had early on that I would give is to try a bunch of different stuff. And so, there's so many different branches of magic. Like we talked about the different sizes of close-up, parlor, stage. There's mentalism, which is its whole own branch, which is like mind reading type tricks.
Yes. I saw that on America's Got Talent. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right. Yes, you did. Yeah, that's right. And it's like, it's very different. It's kind of its whole own thing. So around that, and even just like within close-up magic, there's cards, there's coins, there's rubber bands, there's ropes, there's so many different things. So I guess the advice that I would have is like, try a lot of different stuff, but don't be afraid to like move on from a thing if it doesn't work for you. So like early on, I thought like mentalism was just so cool and great. And I thought that was going to be like a thing I was going to pursue. And it just wasn't. Like it just didn't suit me as a performer. And this was something I had to kind of try for a while and read a bunch of tricks and like try to learn them and try to do them and just like not really feel them until I kind of like got my footing in cards, which is like what I do. So that's, but that being said, the other piece of advice that I have, which is a little cliche, but super, super true, is practice all the time. So you just got to practice so much when you're new. Because it's like learning to play an instrument. There's so much physicality to like handling and stuff. And, towards that, make recordings of yourself practicing and see how it looks because it is a visual art form, stuff like this. Find friends who will let you do stuff on them. Which that was thin. I mean, my mom has seen so many terrible card tricks that I've been like working on, so maybe family member's a good candidate. They can't, they have to see it.
I like that.
But yeah, it's just, and I guess my last piece is just like, don't get discouraged because magic is hard, but you just keep working at it and there's different things. So if something like is not clicking, try something different because there's a lot of parts of magic that are all really cool and good. So
there you go.
Yeah.
What great advice. I loved that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And just a friendly reminder, Tori is going to be at the Chicago Magic Lounge November 4th through 11/7. November 4th through November 7th. Well, same thing. I was getting in that math. Right. Yeah, I was like 11/7. Yeah, I was like trying to get into that math side that you were going on.
I like it. Yeah, that was good. You got it. Nailed it.
Oh, man. Tori, I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. What I always ask is before we end our episode, what are you going to casually do now that we're done with our interview?
Right now, well, I'm going to feed my cat who you met, who's still cruising around down here.
Okay.
And then, I don't know, probably play some video games and then go to bed.
Okay.
I'm a regular person, too.
Oh, I know. When you're not at the Magic Castle, you're killing it.
I know. Yeah.
Oh, no, also you're definitely killing it in all the facets.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll let you go. But just remember, anybody that's listening, please follow Tori Noquez. Can we get the, there we go. We got the handle up. Sassmatician. See, I got it this time. There we go.
Yeah, you got it. You nailed it. That was great.
Got it. Because I added an E because I was like, Sassamatician. And she's like,
well, because it's like mathematician, right? There's another syllable in there. So it's
no, it's all right. Sometimes I need to practice, I'm behind the microphone. And on top of it, I really appreciate anybody that was watching. I was trying to listen to you. My coaster got stuck twice. I think I splashed my face a minute. But I was just so excited to talk to you. I was like, I'm just so pumped.
I didn't even notice. I was just like talking. It was just...
We're good then. Hey, and if you want to go for it, just follow the Casually Molly podcast, casually subscribe, listen. Tell me what episodes you loved. Obviously, your favorite's going to be Tori because she was great. But I'm going to let you casually feed your cat and play some video games, and we'll see everybody later. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Bye, everyone.